Hey guys, so this is going to be my analysis for the recent Meditative Conjuring video that I posted. Now the video itself was quite long and there was quite a lot of activity in it, so I'm not going to mention absolutely everything because we'll be here forever. I'm going to more focus on the things that was sort of slightly easier missed and the more subtle things, and give my thoughts on a few of the bigger things as well that I just think they require a little bit more detail and a bit more analysis to them. So jumping straight in with the K2 meter spikes, they happen quite frequent throughout, but because I'm kind of on the forefront of the video, it's easy to sometimes just miss those. The first one is probably, for me, the most significant, although the others correspond with bumps and bangs and things like that. That first one, because I was completely unaware of it, is what makes it significant. So I was sat there and I'm meditating and I feel a chill, and I mentioned this on camera that I feel a chill up my spine. And at that exact same moment, my eyes are closed and I'm facing the other way. There is no way I could have seen that K2 meter spike, but it spiked at the same moment I felt the chill. So for me, that is probably one of the most valid K2 meter spikes in the session. Though the other ones did correspond with bumps, they weren't like perfectly corresponding the same way that that one was. Now moving forward to the EVP session, now for the most part I had planned that session. I always have a big list of questions that I want to ask, but sometimes the feel of the room, the responses in terms of knocks and things like that, sometimes just lead me in a different direction and I ask different questions and kind of go off on tangents. Now, as with most EVP sessions that I post, this one in particular had a lot more questions than you see on camera, and that's just because they're not getting responses, so there's no point leaving them in there, otherwise the video might be 30 minutes long and a lot of that will just be me sat asking questions and not getting any responses. So I do tend to cut a lot of questions out, so if you do have questions you want me to ask, don't be surprised if I have already asked them and yeah, like I say, I just don't put them in. But the responses that I did get were brilliant. I got 2 EVPs from Anna that I'm 100% confident were from Anna, and a third one that was a little bit harder to understand. Now the first 2 were simple. The first one was, "That's my name." The second EVP was, "I had family." Now in the past she told me that she was alone, and I didn't know quite how to take that. I wasn't sure if she had no friends or family around her as a generalization in life at the time, or if it meant that she had died alone. And with this answer, saying that she had family, that tells me that it's not that she didn't have friends or family, it's more that she was probably alone when she died. Like whatever had happened to her when she was on her own, and that kind of helps us narrow it down, because it's not like it's not a mass thing. It is literally like something has targeted her when she's vulnerable. She's a 24-year-old girl. I mean, it doesn't take a huge stretch of the imagination to think that someone could prey on that when she wasn't suspecting it. So with regards to the third EVP, it was a lot harder to understand. It came through kind of like wind noise reacting with a microphone. But in there, you could hear the syllables. It was like something was literally trying to talk. And I, for one, believe that this was the negative entity that had entered that was trying to speak. And it's either its tones were deeper than the microphone could pick up correctly, or it's using its energy elsewhere, and that's why it couldn't focus all of it on saying what it wanted to say. And I think the general consensus is that it was almost a challenge. A lot of you guys in the comments were commenting your analysis of that EVP, and a lot of it was, "Why don't you try and make me leave?" Just sort of challenging me to try and force it out. "Why don't you make me?" That kind of thing. And as I listened to it over and over again after the video went out, is, "Why don't you try and make?" And that's kind of the best analysis I could get of it. It kind of follows each syllable and the ups and downs of the tones as well. So give that a listen and let me know what you think of that. Now with regards to that negative entity, as I said in the video itself, something just came in and it felt off straight away, and I couldn't put my finger on it. It's like the air in the room just got heavier, and like I said before, I didn't feel like threatened to the point that I felt like I was going to be attacked or anything like that. It was just negative. Like Have you ever been in a room with someone that is clearly in a bad mood or angry, and it's just kind of awkward to be around that person? They're not necessarily doing anything, they're not lashing out, they're not shouting and screaming, they're just there, but you can sense that this is not a person you can talk with. You're not going to go having light-hearted conversations with this person. It kind of brings the mood in the room down, and it was kind of like that. It wasn't an anger, it was just negative. I don't know, it's really hard to explain the way that comes across, but that's how it felt to me. Now, the prize capture for me was probably the skeletal figures on the Kinect camera, and it's the thing that you guys asked the most questions about. Now, it marks a first for me using the Kinect because there were 3 figures on screen at once, which has never happened before. I don't even know if it's possible for the hardware and the software to pick up 3 figures at once. But what's really kind of interesting about those 3 figures is the 2 by the door kind of move in unison. Like, that leads me to believe that either it's kind of one of 3 things. It's either Anna and the negative spirit, as if this negative spirit is kind of looming over the sort of the slightly meeker and smaller entity on there, like oppressing it. That was one that you guys were saying yourselves. The second interpretation is that it was actually the protector spirit and this negative spirit, as if them two were in a back and forth, like the negative spirit was being forced out by the protector spirit. And then there is actually a third interpretation that I recently thought of, and that is that what if these 2 skeletal figures were actually the same entity? Now, the reason I say that is because obviously the Kinect itself is built to recognize humanoid shapes. But what if something showed up that wasn't in a typical humanoid shape? And so rather it can't map a single figure to it, but what if it recognized enough points to stick 2 figures in its place to cover the mass of whatever it was that showed up? Now, this is obviously in the theory that maybe this thing was demonic. I'm not necessarily saying that, but the fact that the 2 sort of moved around in unison like that, just it's either that they are reacting with each other or they are in fact the same entity. So it's just another interpretation, just something that I was thinking about and something that jumped out at me that kind of struck me as interesting about them. And then, like I say, they appeared on 2 occasions throughout the video as well. So the fact that they did appear again and in the same place and in the same kind of position definitely shows that they are connected in some way. Now, the final point that I wanted to go through was the thermal camera, because that actually showed some of the most interesting activity. Although it wasn't in your face and obvious, it was constantly changing throughout the video. It's why I kept cutting back to it. But you can't really notice unless you put them side by side and really delve into them and see the difference. But what's interesting about it is that the way the flare works is it can't stay at a constant scale where, I don't know, -20 is black and 90 degrees is white, because if you go into a cold environment where everything is 0 and below, you're just going to get a wash of black and blue. You're not going to have any detail there. So what it does is it calibrates to the hottest and coldest points in the room. And within this video, I'm obviously the hottest point. I stay in there at a constant temperature, and so everything else kind of calibrates itself around me. But that allows me to see the temperature changes in the room. And what's interesting is I actually comment on a few of those temperature changes throughout the session, how the room's getting colder. I could feel it on my skin, that kind of thing. And you can actually physically see the background getting darker as the session goes on. And I'll just run you through a sequence, and I'll throw the timestamps up top so that you can see how it changed throughout the video. You knock on something if you understand that. Okay. And so that's it for this analysis video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I pointed out some things that you maybe didn't notice before, and maybe even gave you some things to think about as well. Do let me know what you think. I really do appreciate your opinions. So thank you all so much for watching. And as always, I'll post any and all activity as and when I get it.